Hey everybody, welcome to my channel. My name's Brian. Today we're getting back on this Jeep project, and I think I said part 2 in the last one, but this will actually be part 3. Try to get our numbers correct. So I think where we left off this, we were working on the frame, and I got a new rear cross member because I had to destroy the old one to get it off. So let's start back up there. I cleaned up the brackets and I mocked this in place, kind of centered it up. Got everything bolted like it should be. And marked it on the back side because the original one that we took off, so it was actually, I guess it was notched and the frame passed through it and it was welded. And I don't believe that was done after the fact. I believe that was probably factory. Not sure why, I guess maybe to stiffen it other than bolting it all together. So I marked on the back side of the new one. We'll take it off, cut through it, put it back on, and then weld it. I did also get 7/16 flange nuts, which is what was on there originally. Try to make it somewhat correct. There you can see the silver Sharpie marks I made. And I did that from the inside, so we'll need to go slightly to the outside of that and grind a notch. I purchased new fuel lines, brake lines, everything after I painted the frame. Also, a new proportioning valve that will mount. That will mount right here on the frame. The old one was different because it was a drum setup. The new one should be appropriate for a disc setup. It should sit right here on the frame as this mounting point for the brake lines that come up to the master cylinder. This little bracket was all bulged out and kind of rust jacked right here, so I ground some of that off. I tapped that hole to clean it up. So I'm going to bolt this to it, and then I will drill this hole and we'll tap that to be able to mount the proportioning valve, and that's going to be kind of the starting point for running the brake lines and the fuel lines, etc. It's not super critical how this is mounted. It doesn't need to be level or anything crazy like that, but from what I've seen, typically this rear line lines up with this oblong hole on the frame. So we'll use, this is a guide for drilling the hole. Of course, it wants to move around. But that should be enough to mark the hole. And that's the appropriate drill bit for a 5/16 tap. See how that lines up. All right, that should line up well enough to pull that down flat. Secure enough. Since we've uncovered this portion of the frame, we'll give it a little shot of black keep it protected. I purchased a pre-bent brake line kit from Classic Tube, unfortunately not a sponsor, just because this was so jacked up. So they come in a large box. I really didn't feel like trying to bend my own. So they come, this one for the left front, pretty much preformed and without any like shipping bends. So it goes through the frame into that bracket I just dropped, and then it screws right into this proportioning valve. They're also labeled where they go. So this is the right front. Now it has a shipping bend in it. They say their stickers will be where the shipping bend is, but I'm not sure that's entirely the case. But you can kind of figure it out by where I left this one bracket on that holds everything. There's a hold down for the brake lines, and this bend is identical right here. So just make that assumption. I probably need to go back and look at my pictures and see which one's top and bottom. But that one will go in. It'll require a little bit of bend back here to go in the proportioning valve. And then it'll unbend here and go up around this front cross member and through the frame. Up here at the proportioning valve, looks like these fuel supply and return lines kind of attached to it. This frame had a different proportioning valve, and it was a 6-cylinder, so it wasn't quite the same. So I've Googled myself to death, and I've finally come up that, you know what, I'm just going to attach them here. It looks like that's where they're attached. So I got this assortment and horrible freight. Of course, the bolt hole size isn't right, but for what we're doing, it'll work. I hog these out with a grinder. So we'll take this bolt out and figure out where this fuel line, I guess it's possibly the return line because it's smaller, attaches the best, and we're going to send it. Feel like right there is probably the best. So that should help kind of lock this in place. We can still do a little bending and get them where we kind of want them, but we can work backwards from here and get the rear set up. So this comes back. All these lines jump around where the parking brake assembly goes through. And then I believe they're supposed to clamp down in this vicinity, although this vehicle didn't have that, so I guess we'll add that clamp. Jumps over this cross member. This brake line goes out to the middle and goes down to the axle right there. Probably go ahead and get that in just so this can kind of get locked in. And then we'll figure out, looks like we can get a clamp here, and then we can ditch some of these old ones. We might as well figure out our clearance here around the parking brake setup. The old stuff was junk. I cut it all out. I purchased new Crown Automotive parking brake cables. So based on this is what goes in the rear drum. As short as this is, that should be the rear driver's side. This has the same setup, longer, should be the rear passenger, which leaves this, it's not really labeled, I have to go back and look at the part numbers, leaves this to be what attaches right here in this bracket as what goes in the vehicle when you actually pull on. Might as well start right here with the front parking brake cable, the one that goes up to the into the cab, and it came with this clip. Over here, the rear brake line goes through the cross member, and then this union kind of goes up to the rear axle, and that's what distributes the brake fluid. The hard line runs across here, and then this hose attaches here with this clip. It's not tight right now, but I want to get it locked in position so I can go back later and twist this hose if I need to. Here at the parking brake, I realized that it goes through this hole in the frame. Kind of forgot that part, so I rerouted that through. So I think we're pretty much locked in. We need to do a little more adjusting here, probably with another clamp to hold these brake lines down. Over here at the fuel line area, I'm gonna go ahead and clamp these down. There was an existing hole here, so I just need to get that tightened down. That's where I like it. These fuel lines were kind of routed out around here, which from what I've seen isn't right. They're supposed to go around the shock like this. So I'm not sure. They were, what I've seen on the old interwebs, supposed to go around like this. These were twisted over here, which I don't think's right. And they were way out here. If they even were tied down here, I don't even remember. From what I've seen, fuel line's supposed to run along here, along with the brake line, jump around. So I'm going to take this clamp right here. I'm going to drill and tap a hole. I'm going to clamp this down right here. This won't fit the brake line, so it'll just get zip tied to it, something like that, which seems like what the originals were. Seems like from what I've seen on the internet, the original brake lines weren't under these clamps. So we're just going to do what we can do. I'm going to drill and tap and put this clamp in here. Looks like as good a spot as any. Number 7 drill bit. The reason that's number 7 drill bit, this appears to be a 1/4 20 bolt, and that's the appropriate tap size for that. Kind of do it the old power tap method. Have the drill in number 1, we'll just go slow. Wouldn't recommend doing that on super thick metal, but usually the thinner stuff, you can get away with it. They also make a bit that has the drill bit and the tap combined. Makes it really convenient on thinner metal like this. Up here at this front cross member where this was all hogged out, I welded that piece in there and on this side. So I did a little experiment and I cut this side out and ground it down. So now I'll show you how I did it on this side. So to match the size of this hole, I found this roll of tape, which the core is slightly larger than the hole, but I found that I can kind of line it up inside and then trace it with this marker. And it gives me a pretty good approximation of the diameter of that hole. The other side was a lot less, needed to be added. I'm going to use this air saw and try to hack this out of here. Hold your ears. So if that noise wasn't enough, we'll go here with the die grinder and just try to line up and kind of remove all that green line or half of it, and we should be close. Hold your ears. So this will be covered by the giant tow hitch thing that goes on here. So this doesn't have to end up being the prettiest, but it will go slightly inside about a Sharpie's width, and we'll put a hole in there. Do that at each end, and then we'll just connect the dots with the grinder. Oh, almost went the wrong side. Those are my reference holes, and we'll go slightly, I don't know, we'll just go between them. If we need to, we can fill that in and move the weld over. That actually lines up pretty well. I think now I'm just going to widen that slot a little bit, and then we'll clean some of this up and you can get it welded. So I think we're pretty good as far as a welding area. And one problem we have is the bracket inside, 2 L brackets are symmetric and the holes don't line up. This one's way inboard, like over here, and it'll bolt through these holes on this massive cross member. So I need to go ahead and mark those now and take this off and drill the holes, because being able to get in here with a right angle drill, I may not have captured that, but I got the bolt holes re-drilled, or really kind of just clearance drilled. This side was pretty good. Driver's side was off a little bit. Got them in, got a bolt in it. Can always tune it up later when I put the other bolts in. I'm kind of out of bolts now. So I think we're ready. Let's go ahead and weld this in. This auto darkening helmet flaked out last time I used it, and I put a battery in it, so let's see if that fixed it. It did. The problem is I have all kinds of reflection from outside, so I really can't see what I'm doing. We'll try the towel over the head trick, see if that does anything. That helps, but it's almost like we're a little bit too dark. This is all covered by the rear bumper angle iron thing, so I'm just going to throw some paint on there to protect it. Doesn't need to look beautiful. I splashed some paint in these holes that I milled out. Probably need to do a little bit more. Let's see if that was effective. They all lined up. I have those serrated flange nuts, so I'm going to send it. Consider this part done. And check on the rest of these, but they should be tight. This rear bumper, whatever you want to call it, is firmly attached now. I think that's done. Next, I need to attack this rear end. This is an AMC 20. The one in the other Jeep is the same thing. They're the same ratio. This one looks actually less crusty, and I have all new brakes, brake lines, wheel bearing seals, so I was going to strip one or the other and put it back in the final version. So these springs look less crusty than the other one. So my idea was, let me get this axle separated from the springs, and then I'm going to make an attempt to refurbish these springs, and there doesn't appear to be anything wrong with them. And I don't think new springs are going to be in the budget. I soak these nuts down on these U-bolts with penetrating oil. Let's see if that's going to be effective. I have a feeling probably not. No, it's actually turning. Finally wrestled one of these springs out, so I'm going to see if I can heat this nut that holds it together, heat it up, and then get it off the impact. Then we can see if we can take this apart. Not really sure what happens next. I'm assuming this top one comes off. And then this second one, and then we'll need to cut these clamps, take the rest apart. I think I'll try to keep them in somewhat of an order. Taken one of the rear leaf springs and I've essentially rebuilt it. So my plan is now I'll take the other one off if I can get it off and show you the steps I went through to get it to this state. And I need to hurry because it's going to get dark. I found these spring clamp repair clips for this 2.5 inch wide spring. So the first step, I'm going to paint the inside of these. This may not be 100% necessary, but it'll protect what I can't get to later. So this spring is finally out of there. Let's see if we can get it apart. So there's a center pin that runs through here. The other one, that nut was pretty much rotted off. I had to torch it and mess around to get it off. I think we're just going to step straight to the grinder on this one. Let's see if that's enough to release it. Yes. So I'll try to keep these pieces in order. It shouldn't spring too much, but we'll put this on here just in case. Now we need to cut these clamps off of here that clamp the leaves together. So down on this end, the whole shackle end, that's all seized in there, is not going to come out, so we'll need to cut. You can see that. I have new shackles, bushings, so that needs to all come out of there. Guess I should remember which direction it went in. Just remember the nuts go to the outside of the vehicle in this case. So I'll get that cut out of there. And then at the other end, we'll need to go press that bushing out of there. And then we can clean all this up. And that allows this first spring to come in two pieces. So first one is just kind of two loops, and then the one that slides in it is the shackle and bushing. Now it's all stripped apart. I think I'm going to switch gears and switch grinders and switch over to our wheel and get all this rust knocked off here, just because it's getting dark, and I want to kind of get this osphode so possibly we can paint it tomorrow, which is also going to make a huge dust cloud mess. So here we go. I got these springs all cleaned up. I mean, cleaned up well enough. I'll have maybe a couple little more touch-up spots. This one here, need to get this frozen shackle bushing out of. And this one here, there's the bushing we need to get out. So we'll take this to the vise where we can hold on to it. The shackle end, maybe we'll get lucky and it'll just knock out of there. Guess not. So one method is to take a drill bit and drill out the rubber. Let's see if that'll work. Guess it would be rubber and rust. So that's one way of doing that. Now maybe we can clean it out some. This end's probably going to be a little more difficult. My best luck was with, this is actually a little burn trying to cut all this crap to get it out of the vehicle, but then we'll do the drill bit trick. Relieve some of this pressure. So at that point, that leaves the outer shell of the pressed in bushing. So on the first one, I used a Sawzall and cut through this crack and got it to split and was beating on it with a chisel. And then I remembered a trick from my former career. So this air chisel can be pretty handy at getting stuff like this out. Let's see if this will work straight out without trying to cut through any of that. Hold your ears. That saved a lot of time. So there's the new bushing. We might as well go ahead and press it in while we have it here. That is the part number on this particular unit. So we just need to press this in. If you had a hydraulic press, you could find something. So to press this in, if you had a hydraulic press, you could hold it, some sort of shell, push around it. What I did on the other one was gave it a few taps. Try to get it just where it would kind of hold itself in there. Obviously, it just bounces off when you pound on the inner portion of it, but if you can get it to just get stuck enough. Potentially can use a ball joint press. Which is what I did with the other one, and I believe I just pressed on the middle and it provided enough gripping power and force that it went in. Gave it a little shot of something to lubricate it. Probably not really helps any, not necessary. So we'll give it some ugga-duggas and see if it'll start. Let's try going the right direction. Gave it a little more taper with the grinder. Maybe it'll help get started a little bit straighter. Maybe we can resort to a little bigger socket, help it start a little straighter. Problem with this ball joint press is there's nothing to keep the forcing screw little foot centered on there, so it wants to walk off. And sometimes you get lucky and it'll stay centered and push it in. Now let's see if we need to go any further. Yeah, we need to go quite a bit further. So it's pollen blowing season. So we just stir up all the pollen. As a matter of fact, that's what's all over this stuff. So anyway, to reassemble the spring pack, here's what I did on the first one. I got some dry moly lube, anything would work practically. And then we're gonna reassemble the leaves with this in between them. Paint would just get stuck or rub off or whatever. So and just give this a hose down. We'll let that dry for a minute. And then go ahead and clean any rust that I missed on the other springs while we're waiting. So now we'll just take this spring. I guess we could actually give that a shot in there. So now we should be able to take the spring. This is the one that kind of lives inside this other one. And I've kept them, I think, directionally in order. So next up would be this one. And that'll go on there such as that, keeping the center holes lined up. These little plastic pads, I guess they're anti-squeak, I don't know. I couldn't find them anywhere, so we're just gonna go back with existing. So I got some new center leaf spring pins. That's the part number. That's what it looks like. It's essentially a bolt almost with the head turned off and a nut. We'll just want to make sure that that is going to pass up through there. Help us keep lined up anyway. Now that I released that clamp, it pretty much centered itself. Those are little spring clamps we previously painted. There's a indent right here that drops in that hole. And that should slide up, sort of capture those ears. And just fold them over. Now we'll just give these a coat of Ospo and let them dry and let it can do whatever it does to this rust.